Let me know when you're ready, and I'll start your 8-minute timer.
Okay, I'm good to go. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. John, my opponent, Breakfast Taco, thanks for moderating. Looking forward to it. Now, I'll be defending that Christian nationalism would be good for the United States. I think Christian nationalism would be a system that would be better than almost any governing system in the world, but we will be limiting our argumentation specifically to the United States here. I define Christian nationalism as a system that prioritizes the beliefs that our moral foundations come from God, in particular from the Christian God, and through the book outlined in the Old and New Testament and the covenant through Jesus Christ. I will not be talking about specific denominations of Christianity, nor do I think that that is necessary to reference wanting a Christian nationalist system. The system could be a system that could be made up of many Christians, including those from LDS services, from Protestant, Lutheranism, or it could be Catholic, Orthodox, whatever. That part does not interest me. Nor will I be talking much theology and biblical references other than to reference things like the Ten Commandments. I believe that the moral foundations outlined through Christianity and through the New Testament, although including the Old Testament as well, particularly the Ten Commandments, are a foundation that is necessary for building a strong, cohesive society that would have the best possible outcome for all peoples within this society. I believe that although there are people that identify as Christian that serve in our government, and although there are people that claim in our government, though less of them, that Christianity influences their decision, we are becoming bereft of that. And we are certainly doing everything we can in most of our system, at least in the Democratic Party, to run away from saying that Christ is an influence and that the Ten Commandments and the Bible is an influence on the policies that they're passing. The Supreme Court has made us more and more secular over the years on decisions that taken in public schools have taken prayer out of public schools, on decisions that have instituted more secular beliefs. And that, I believe, has led to a poorer society. And we're only on the cusp of how bad things are going to become. And I'll cite various metrics as to how that will be the case. So my argument will be merely that a Christian nationalist society is one where we are electing people that are Christians, truly practicing Christians, that are using the moral framework outlined in the Bible and in Christianity in order to pass laws in this country. And that should be done in all three branches of our governance. Of course, the argument will be that we never were fully Christian national. And although there is some warrant to that, I think that the founding fathers came through a tradition of the American moral proposition, which said that we ought to be morally good. And those foundational moral principles came through, as the Declaration of Independence shows, one nation created under God, or a creator, as it said in the Declaration of Independence. They understood that it's not moral relativism, that the deist or the Christian beliefs, which oftentimes went hand in hand with the founding fathers, these beliefs prescribed what was moral. And much of the influence of that were things like the Ten Commandments. And we have gotten away from that. For example, the proposition of thou shalt not murder. We see that things like abortion are not only legal, even in the most heinous of ways, but actually are celebrated in many aspects. When it says that you shall not commit adultery, we see that we are becoming more secular every day in both our culture and laws, as we now have increasing numbers of women that are forced to sell themselves or choose to sell themselves, including in places online where it's glorified. Sexual promiscuity is leading to the erosion of the family, and it's one of the worst things imaginable for almost all outcomes in our society. A return to a Christian nationalist system, or one that was less secular in our political sphere, will have an even greater influence on not just our laws. And that influence is that it will begin to help change this country culturally. That cultural framework will be more important than anything that could be legislated. Wanting to be a good person, wanting to be a moral person, wanting to be a good Christian is more effective if you are voluntarily making that choice than being forced through government fiat and having some sort of law through the influence of imprisonment, fines, etc., to be forced to make these good decisions. Of course, none of the prescriptions I'm offering will occur overnight, but these will be slow, gradual changes that will be beneficial. All I need to win this debate is that a move towards Christian nationalism would be preferred over what we see as the status quo. My opponent will be forced to defend a status quo where we do not have birth rates that will be able to keep us above replacement. This means that all sorts of negative outcomes will come upon us. such as we will see the economy precipitously decline, particularly as millennials get to the age where they will need care as older people, and there won't be enough younger people to take care of them. We'll see GDP decline. We'll see innovation decline. We'll see the United States lose status amongst countries that actually are giving increased amounts of childbearing. This means that the world will actually become even worse in the secularist framework that my opponent will endorse. As we see people that are procreating at greater numbers in religions such as Islam, eventually that will overtake because the secular humanists have amongst the lowest birth rates. This means if we adapt a Christian nationalist principle, which would lead to cultural Christianity taking off more, we have a chance of actually having some of the policies that my opponent would like be more likely to occur in a Christian framework than they ever would be possible in frameworks such as Islam. And make no mistake about it, Christians actually are far more for securing the border and keeping the cultural impacts of things that we see from the foundational principles of the Ten Commandments in Christianity. Much of this would be better for people even in sectors of groups that we think sin, such as the transgender or the LGBT community. If we have open borders, which are more preferred from people that are less religious, what we'll see is we'll eventually bring in people from other cultures that are antithetical to those very values that even the secularists speak to. And so, for these reasons and many others, we need to adapt a Christian national framework that will prioritize Christian principles and the family unit. We have seen that our country has gone further and further away from prioritizing the family unit.
And then John or Godless Engineer, whenever you're ready, let me know, and I'll start your 8 minutes.
All right. So, ready to start. All right. So, I'm here today to talk about why Christian nationalism is harmful for everyone. This is going to be a case for a secular humanist sort of future for our society. First of all, Christian nationalism undermines democracy and human rights. Any political ideology, and this is my basic argument here, any political ideology that violates fundamental democratic principles, including religious freedom, equality under law, and minority rights, is harmful to all members of a society. Christian nationalism violates these fundamental democratic principles by imposing religious dominance, eroding church-state separation, enabling discrimination, and supporting authoritarian control. Therefore, Christian nationalism is harmful to all members of a society. There's an erosion of religious freedom and pluralism that I just mentioned. Christian nationalism fundamentally contradicts the constitutional principle that participation in American democracy is not based on religious beliefs or lack thereof, rather than protecting religious freedom. It actively rejects it by advocating for the merger of Christianity with American national identity and governance. This ideology seeks to privilege one particular interpretation of Christianity over all other religious traditions and non-religious perspectives, effectively creating second-class citizenship for anyone outside this narrow definition. Research from PRRI indicates that approximately 30% of Americans identify as adherents or supporters of Christian nationalism. These supporters believe the government should officially declare the United States a Christian nation, that U.S. laws should reflect Christian values, and that being Christian is essential to being authentically American. This worldview directly threatens the First Amendment dual protections, both the right to religious belief and expression, and the guarantee that government neither prefers religion over non-religion nor favors particular faiths over others. The United States' historic commitment to religious pluralism enables diverse faith communities to live in civic harmony without sacrificing theological convictions. Christian nationalism undermines this foundation by promoting the undemocratic view that America is exclusively a nation for Christians. When a powerful minority of conservative Christians uses state power to enforce its values over everyone else, the democratic legitimacy of that power is fundamentally called into question. Then there's the discrimination against marginalized communities. Christian nationalism leads directly to discrimination and at times violence against religious minorities, non-religious individuals, LGBTQ plus communities, women, and people of color. The ideology incorporates elements of patriarchy, white supremacy, nativism, and heteronormativity, often overlapping with and providing cover for racial subjugation. The targeting of LGBTQ plus individuals is particularly pronounced. Across all 50 states, support for Christian nationalism is negatively correlated with the support for the LGBTQ rights, including non-discrimination protections, marriage equality, and transgender rights, as we heard in my opponent's opening. Among Christian nationalism adherents, 52% oppose non-discrimination laws and only 22% support marriage equality. LGBTQ plus communities have become cultural scapegoats, blamed for everything from violent crime to moral decline. Despite having done nothing wrong, some preachers have even called for the execution of LGBTQ plus people from their pulpits. This discrimination extends beyond rhetoric. Christian nationalist organizations like the Alliance Defending Freedom have systematically pursued legal strategies to ensure that their particular theological beliefs are respected above all others, regardless of the cost of LGBTQ plus rights. The movement has been linked to book bans targeting LGBTQ plus history, attacks on drag shows, and the propagation of baseless accusations labeling LGBTQ plus individuals as pedophiles and groomers. Next, support for authoritarianism and political violence. Christian nationalism is strongly associated with authoritarianism and the support for political violence. While half of Americans agree that society is in trouble because people do not obey authority, this number rises to 69% among Christian nationalism sympathizers and 74% among adherents. These supporters are primed to walk down authoritarian paths to ensure their rightful place atop the national hierarchy. The January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol starkly demonstrated this connection. Christian nationalism was the central driving force behind the attack. Insurrectionists held Bibles aloft, prayed in the Senate, and carried Christian flags and openly confessed their motivations on video. The many disparate identities and ideologies visible during the attack were united under a banner of Christian nationalism, which created the permission structure necessary for violence. Research demonstrates that Christian nationalism's effect on support for political violence, conditioned by perceived victimhood, reinforcing racial and religious identity, and immersion in conspiratorial information sources like QAnon. The movement promotes a warfare rhetoric tinged with stochastic terrorism, describing current politics as warfare for the destiny of the nation. This existential framing leads adherents to cast aside core democratic values, backing autocratic political leaders who espouse their religious values and using minority rule to marginalize opponents. Next, we've got undermining democratic institutions and minority rule. Christian nationalists are increasingly comfortable weakening democratic norms to ensure political outcomes favorable to their group. Structural bias in Senate representation in the Electoral College gives us conservative rural states with high proportions of evangelical residents outsized power. This minority rule was instrumental in the Supreme Court's recent term, where conservative Christian justices appointed by a president who lost the popular vote overturned abortion rights despite overwhelming public support. Christian nationalism views equal participation in civic life as a privilege, not a right, because adherents believe the United States was made by and for a particular people. They believe full participation in democracy should only be guaranteed to true citizens representing the preferred group. This perspective fundamentally contradicts the principle that in a diverse society like the United States, democratic government must be for all people.
1 minute.
Leaders of the religious right have historically focused not only on getting the right people to vote, but on limiting access to the vote so that the wrong people cannot vote. Paul Weyrich, a leader of the religious right, openly stated this goal in the 1980 convention, revealing the movement's anti-democratic core. When Christian nationalist leaders challenge the outcome of free and fair elections, they do so with the full backing of their supporters, threatening the peaceful transfer of power that is essential to democracy. Probably don't have enough time to get into my solution of secular humanism. I do have a couple slides on this, and it's rather extensive here. But as you can see, secular humanism is superior because it has a foundation of reason and human dignity. It affirms inherent worth of every individual without hierarchies. It provides true protection for religious freedom, and the separation of church and state ensures freedom for all beliefs.
That is time.
There's equality. Okay.
Perfect.
And I guess I'm done.
Thank you for the questions, and then y'all can go into the open discussion portion.
written in the
Please,
Constitution?
when it came to democratically electing the people in our federal government.
What's written in the
Yes,
Constitution?
okay. Who was democratically elected? Tell me what was written in the Constitution. Go for it.
Okay, a democratic republic, I'll just read the definition real
that
quick,
wasn't
is a
my
form of
question. That
government that
wasn't my
combines the
question.
principles of both a republic and a democracy, operating through a system where elected representatives make decisions on behalf of the people. So we elect representatives who then make decisions on behalf of a greater people. Now, I'm not under the disillusionment that America has ever been a pure democracy, which I'm guessing is what the founders were actually opposed to. So I don't think that we should be a pure democracy, but I mean, I think that a democratic republic is what we have, how our Constitution is set up, and that's how we should probably. Christianity supported slavery and the founders supported slavery. Do you think that we should continue to have slavery
No,
now?
we have amendments and fought a war over slavery. I asked you specifically.
No,
Yes, that's what you
said,
did.
if I said what the framers intended, as far as the framers intended a living document to change over time. That's what that is. You are trying to, I don't know, are you an originalist? Like, you think that we should only do things that the framers would do? Like, I'm totally confused by your
No,
entire
I
argument.
asked you specifically how important you thought the foundational document, the Constitution, and the framers were, and you said that that's something we should follow. And then that's when I said,
Right,
that's
and I'm
real quick. Let
following
me
the
finish. Let me
Constitution.
finish.
You
Real
were
quick.
bringing up
That's why
the
I said.
irrelevant point
That's why I
about
wasn't.
how they would have voted.
It is not
What
irrelevant.
this nation was meant
Please
to
let me finish.
to
I will refresh.
represent.
I'll refresh your memory of how this came about. I then said, well, seeing as how you keep using the word democracy and it wasn't written in the foundational document, like you would
It
agree.
doesn't have to be written in the foundational documents because it's described in the foundational
Okay,
documents.
so let's ask you this. You seem to think democracy is very important, yes?
I mean, we have a democratic republic, and I believe that's important. Yeah.
But you talked about the importance of securing democracy, i.e., all of us having a vote, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then, for example, if the majority of this country were Christians and voted that they wanted Christian theology to be part of our country, why wouldn't that be anti-democratic to say that they're not allowed to do that?
Because the Constitution in the First Amendment says that you can't promote one religion or another, over another. So that would be a violation of the First Amendment.
So then you would say that democracy doesn't matter in that effect, that authoritarianism of the government saying you can't do this is okay.
The Democrat, no, that's probably, I mean, people can vote for it, but the fact that the First Amendment precludes it means that vote is in vain.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that they can't vote
So what
for it.
exactly?
They can vote for it all they want.
So what
to.
exactly did I propose that the First Amendment wouldn't allow in my version of Christian nationalism?
I mean, I took notes.
Sure.
I've got like.
True at all. That's not true at all.
You think that elected officials should base laws on the Bible, which in some sense seems to indicate that they should be Christian.
I believe that our policies that we put forth should be rooted in the moral foundations of Christianity, and we should promote Christian leaders.
Which moral
We should
foundations?
push Christian leaders into positions of power to enact laws that are based on that. And seeing as how Christians are the majority of this country, that wouldn't be anti-democratic, nor am I aware of anything.
It would
Let
be
me- real quick,
anti-democratic.
nor would there be anything in the Constitution that I'm aware of that would make this illegal.
Yes, it would be
What
illegal.
part of
The
that's
First
illegal?
Amendment does.
We're not allowed
The
to
First
openly be
Amendment.
Christian and say Christianity influences our political decisions if we're in office.
No, you could say that, but if the entire reason why you're making a law is because the Bible says, then would be a violation of the First
That's not
Amendment.
true. Tell me where it says that I can't do that.
I mean, you can't promote one religion over another. So like if you have a law and the only reason why that law is because of the Bible, that's promoting one religion over another.
Would you acknowledge that my religion would just be my moral foundational principles?
I mean, you could say that your foundational principles are influenced by that. Yeah, sure.
Okay, when you want a policy passed, is it because of your moral foundational principles?
I would say so, but my moral foundation is supported by reason and evidence, whereas the only evidence that you have is the Bible says. Now, and let me go back to my slavery thing.
That's not true.
The Bible supports slavery, it has God condoning slavery. So if you were to if we were to become a Christian nationalist nation, would you be fine if slavery was
No,
reimplemented?
I think that slavery is bad, nor do I think that Christianity, although there are
Okay,
times in the
well,
Bible, although there are times in the Bible
yeah.
where it's mentioned, nor do I think that the New Testament encourages or allows slavery. I don't believe that's the case.
Oh yeah, Zohar Mamdani project. You're trying to project on
You
me
make
like
this point about democracy. When gay marriage was passed, was that democratic? Was there a democratic vote on that?
It was done through the Supreme Court.
Okay, but that's not democracy.
I mean, it's part of our democratic republic. We've got 3 branches of government. The Supreme Court, it's clearly set up in the Constitution that the Supreme Court makes a ruling and that ruling becomes law.
So you would say that if the court rules on something, even if the majority of people don't like it, that's okay, that's still democratic?
I mean, but the majority of people are fine with
But
it.
they weren't at the time that gay marriage was legalized. So was that
I'm not
authoritarian?
too sure about that.
No, that's definitely your opening statement said.
Your position, John, and then let's go back into the topic. I've got a few super chat questions, so we can look at one of the super chat questions and then get back on topic.
I'll just say this. I'll ask this. Maybe we get it. Regardless of what your opening statement said, fine. Will you acknowledge that if I had heard, whether correctly or erroneously, that you said it was authoritarianism and anti-democratic for the Supreme Court to overrule Roe v. Wade because of the fact the majority of people would have been against that, that's incorrect? That's not what you actually believe. Is that fair?
So I said the minority rule was instrumental in the Supreme Court's recent term, where conservative Christian justices appointed by a president who lost a popular vote overturned abortion rights despite overwhelming public support. So what this is undermining democratic institutions and minority rule. And this is not about authoritarianism. So no, I did not call it authoritarianism.
Okay, but how is this undermining democracy if you just explained to us thoroughly, even if democratically people would vote against a position, the Supreme Court ruling on it, in fact, any of the 3 branches doing anything, is part of our democratic republic system and therefore wouldn't be anti-democratic? Seems that you've contradicted yourself here.
No, it's not contradictory. This minority rule was instrumental in the Supreme Court's recent term, where conservative Christian justices appointed by a president who lost the popular vote overturned abortion rights despite overwhelming public support. So there's overwhelming public support, and then the minority rule.
What's minority rule? Define that.
Well, the minority making a decision for the majority.
So in other words, because 5 justices on the Supreme Court made a decision, that's anti-democratic.
I think that the way that the Supreme Court was stacked, it definitely was anti-democratic.
So just this court is anti-democratic. This court's illegitimate?
Sure. No, I didn't say it was illegitimate, but the way that it's structured is very anti-democratic.
Okay,
yeah.
But wouldn't all courts be anti-democratic in the sense that none of us get to vote for any of the justices?
No, because we can then vote for people, just like what's happening tonight. I'm just, as an example of what I was saying, as we're talking tonight, there's literally a blue wave going on in all of the elections that are currently happening, in the states that are holding elections. So just a wave of things here. So there was unpopular shit that happened, right? People went to the polls, they voted for Democrat leaders, so that those Democrat leaders could then go in and change things the way that they wanted them to. That is how it's supposed to work. Now, was I happy with the decision by the Supreme Court about Roe v. Wade? No, I obviously wasn't. But I also did not at any point claim that it was anti-democratic or anything like that. But I do think that the Supreme Court is structured in a way that it allows the minority of the USA to make decisions for the majority against what the people actually want, because the people actually approve of Roe v. Wade. People actually approve of having abortion access. So that is an undermining of the will of the people.
So again, what happens is you've waffled on this several times. When we said that it was,
I haven't waffled at all. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Let you. When you said that, when we said that it may have been against the will of the people when they made same-sex marriage legal, you said, well, it wouldn't matter because these institutions are part of our democratic democratic republic, and therefore it wouldn't be anti-democratic. And then as soon as Roe v. Wade, which you mentioned in your opening statement, is overruled, you say that it is anti-democratic because there's something uniquely about this court that you don't like. And it seems that you're just being subjective, as is the case with secular humanism and your morality.
Actually,
you
I
apply it in a
specifically said
subjective
that the
sense
court
is what
was
you're doing.
structured in an
We could all see-
anti-democratic way,
we could
not
see-
that the process was anti-democratic.
How is
There's a
it
difference there.
anti-democratic to kick it back to the state so that people could vote on abortion? How's that anti-democratic? Isn't that more democratic?
No, it's not more democratic.
Okay, so
because
who got to
we're
vote on-
part of a federal system, and that federal system has to provide some very base level protection of rights, and part of those rights should be the right to abortion.
Okay, you might think that, but did you get to vote on that?
I mean, I would vote on it, but I'm in Alabama.
But you
so
didn't
no,
get to
I
vote
didn't.
on it when Roe v. Wade was the law of the land. The court
So
decided
Roe
that
v.
without one vote.
Right, Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, and
Correct.
that's the reason. And so I disagree with that, but it's not that I think that the process is anti-democratic. I think that the structure, like, are you just deficient in that you can't understand what I'm saying?
No,
here?
I
Is
am
that what
understanding.
you
You're
are?
literally using the wrong criticism of your complaint of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. You could
No,
say
I'm
that
not.
it was more democratic to allow people to vote on it. You just said in your own
We're
words.
not even
Let me
discussing the
finish.
fucking
Let me
topic
finish.
at this point.
Let me finish. You said in your own words, the Democrats didn't even put it up for a vote. They didn't even do legislation because they're cowards. Right. No one
Right.
voted on it. Now, after Roe v. Wade, people then got to vote for representatives that voted on it. In some states, they actually got to vote for the measure itself on the ballot. That is, by any definition, more democratic.
No, I think that it would be just as democratic for us to vote on it with our elected officials and have our elected officials make it a law. Like, I
Okay.
think that's just as democratic as everybody directly in this pure democratic form that you seem to be advocating for some reason, which I just want to point out, legalized gay marriage, and also for the longest time, people have supported the right to abortion, even now. So,
Again, you're fundamentally misunderstanding what democracy
and you're
means. People
fundamentally not
voting.
even discussing
You're
the topic of this
misunderstanding.
stream.
You're misunderstanding what democracy is. Now, the reason that we
No.
bring up democracy, the reason that we're bringing up was that was seemingly the only offensive position you had against Christian nationalism. I talked about how Christian nationalism would be important to solve birthrights. I talked about how it'd be important for cohesion, how it would be important for sort of the majority opinion, how it would be important to solve things like abortion and other things that are moral and would lead to a happier society, that Christians tend to be happier in the United States.
Do you think women treated as property is? Do you think women being treated as property is happening?
Your attack against it was authoritarianism, violence, and anti-democracy. We've dispensed with the democracy bullshit. Okay.
No, we haven't.
Okay,
I mean,
yes,
I
we
don't think that
certainly
it's.
have.
I don't think that it's central to the topic at hand. You seem to be wanting to make it a central topic, but
If the
no, I
majority
mean,
of people in this country are Christian and vote to want that religion to be the foundational principles of the laws that are passed, why wouldn't it be anti-democratic to not allow them?
because it's part of our Constitution. If you want
Show
to
me.
vote for
Show me where it says that. Show me
the
in the
First
Constitution.
Amendment, God
Show me-
damn, do
read
you
the
not know
First
the
Amendment.
First Amendment?
Read the First Amendment and tell me where it says that I can't say I'm voting against abortion because I'm Christian. Tell me where it
No,
says that.
I didn't say that. That's
Okay,
not what I said.
what I explained as Christian nationalism is that we elect Christians
You
that vote
keep,
on
you keep
policies based on
waffling
their
on
religion and
everything
morality.
that you're talking about. You're jumping from one topic to one
I'm not.
topic to one topic and acting like they're all the exact same topic.
That's not true. I've been clear the entire time. I made this
No,
point
you're
earlier.
wobbling around more than a
I
Trump
want you to
person
show-
trying to leave a bar.
Can you steel man what I said Christian nationalism is?
No, I can't.
Right, because you're not listening.
No,
Nothing
I am
I said.
listening. You're just
Nothing
not
I
clear.
said about saying that we will elect people that are Christians that adapt a Christian moral framework in their legislation. Nothing about that is outlawed in the Constitution or the First Amendment. Show me where it is.
No, what I said was that you cannot make laws purely based on the Bible.
That's not
what I
true.
said.
Show me where it says that.
No, yes. No,
Sure, show me where it says
in the First Amendment, it says that you can't promote one religion over another.
Show me. Read the First Amendment where it says that.
No, so you're asking for a very
Read the
specific
amendment.
line,
Just read it.
and you're trying. You can read it right now.
Okay, so you're going to say somewhere in the First Amendment it says you can't use a religion for your reason as your exclusive reason to pass a law.
No, you
That's what you're gonna
cannot
say.
promote one religion over others.
How is that promoting one religion over another if I say my moral
If
framework
your
is being
only
a Christian?
reason, if your only reason for passing a law is because the Bible says so, then that is a violation of the First Amendment. You
That's
can
not
have
true.
other reasons.
That's not true. I'm allowed to use any moral code I want as a politician or as a voter to push any law. There's no
Yeah,
law.
sure,
The First Amendment does not.
can,
I
but
can't
if you
establish.
pass a law
I can't
and
establish a
it
national
promotes
religion. That's
religion,
about it. I can't establish a national religion. That's about it. That's not what I'm
no,
suggesting
that's
we do.
not true. That's not
Okay,
even
then
true.
I'll read the First Amendment. You tell me the part where it says you can't say, "Hey, I'm voting against abortion because it's a Christian. I think that
That's not
life
what I
is
said.
sacrosanct." Okay,
That's not what
if
I said. You keep changing what I'm saying. You're a dishonest interlocutor.
I'm
That's
not.
what
It
you are.
seems that what you're saying is, you correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that I can't suggest I'm voting for a law because purely my religion.
I'm saying that you can't advance a law that is only based on your religion.
Okay, so if I say I'm advancing outlawing abortion because I think it's against my religion and it's murder because my religion says so.
Oh, well, your religion doesn't care about killing babies
It
because
doesn't
your
matter
God
what you
kills
think about
babies.
my religion. I'm giving you my justification for being against abortion is my religion. You're saying I'm not allowed to do that.
I'm saying that you can put that up, but if the only defense you have for it is that particular defense, then yeah, it would be
Here's what
it
the
would go
first
against the First Amendment.
For those of you that don't know, here's what the First Amendment says, and he's trying to extrapolate this. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. This is
Right.
not
No
establishing
law
would
respecting an
you say that
establishment of religion.
okay, would you say that me saying I'm voting against abortion because my religion is me establishing a religion?
No, that's not what the establishment
Right.
of
Okay.
religion
So
is. No,
yes,
that's
that's
not what that means.
you explain to me what they
No
mean by
no law respecting an establishment of religion. Not that it establishes a national religion, but it's no law respecting an establishment of religion. I don't know.
right. In
I'm
other
an
words,
engineer, so hey,
establishing
honey, am
a
I wrong about this?
Well,
yes,
let's
you're
make
No,
sure
he's
absolutely
great at English.
let's
You're
make sure that we're tying these topics back, or the discussion back into the topic. Is Christian nationalism good for America?
sure.
Because it seems to be going kind of off the side, but that's okay. Just pull it
Okay,
back
yeah.
in.
Let me propose something here. So one of my problems with Christianity and Christian nationalism in general is the fact that you're basing your laws and all that kind of stuff off of what the Bible says, and the moral laws. Like I've gotten written down here that you hold the Ten Commandments
Sure.
pretty high up there.
Correct.
So if you think, do you think that the Ten Commandments should be like codified into law?
I think that the Ten Commandments should be the foundational principle for how we establish our laws.
Okay, so then the first through like the third commandments are anti-free speech. Are you anti-free speech?
Well, it depends. No, I don't consider myself to be anti-free speech, nor do I think that we should enshrine into law that you should not be allowed to blaspheme. I think that though the laws that we did,
so I can say
let me-
"goddamn." You like you're fine if
legally,
I want to say
I
"goddamn."
think that it's probably not the best idea. I say it myself. I think it's probably not a good idea to say it from a moral perspective, but I don't think it should be illegal for you to do such. Nor do I think that if we promoted my form of Christianity, which are Christians today using this as a framework, that there's any evidence whatsoever to suggest that the majority of Christians, if put in positions of power, would outlaw that.
Which of the Ten Commandments do you think shouldn't be enshrined in law?
Well, I would say that when we're looking at them, there's no need to enshrine into law anything from the First Amendment, anything from the Second Amendment, taking the Lord's name of vain,
I mean,
keeping
commandment?
the Lord's Day holy. I didn't have a problem. In fact, we often did that. Like, for example, in my state of Pennsylvania, we often said there were a lot of things you couldn't do on Sunday, which was rooted in sort of the idea of the Lord's Day, and taking off. So I didn't really have a problem with that. I don't think
Is
we
that a
should
violation
enshrine.
of the First Amendment?
No, no, was it?
It would
Like
have been,
when
yeah.
liquor stores were closed in Pennsylvania on Sundays, is that a violation of the First Amendment? You tell me.
Oh no, I mean,
Okay, right, that's
there
my
are
point.
dry counties around here too, but I mean,
Right.
I would definitely consider that to be pushing a certain form of
When we take off for
Christianity.
Christmas, is that a violation of the First Amendment?
Well, no, I mean, Christmas has been identified by the federal government as a holiday, a national holiday.
I
So
don't think even if we said that it was just a religious holiday, that it would be a violation of the First Amendment. I think that "you shall not kill" should be the foundation of our legal system.
I just
Not
hold
commit-
on, wait a second. We've totally passed over those first three, and you said that
I just
you
went
think,
through them. I
but
went through
you
them
think
one
that
by
I
one.
know, I understand that, but
Mhm.
you said that the Ten Commandments should be the basis for all laws,
Correct.
but then you're
Yes.
skipping the first three.
I didn't skip. I said that there's no need to
Four,
enshrine it
actually.
within law.
Okay, but
I don't think we need to make it
if
illegal.
those should inspire law, then how are you dismissing them?
I think that the legal system is designed for us on earth to have a system that allows us to live in a harmonious way. I think there are certain things that we could say God says are immoral that aren't necessary to make illegal, such as taking his name in vain. However, things like murder are something that we should say that both should be
Okay,
immoral
you're not
and
answering
should
my
be illegal.
question.
That is absolutely answering your question. Now,
No,
I'll
no, no.
turn the question to
What
you.
was my
Where
question?
is your framework as a
Can you
secular
still man my
humanist?
question?
Yes, your question was, why should we not have, if I say this is the moral foundation for our law, why should these first three not be a law? I directly
Okay.
answered that by saying that just because I'm saying the 10 Commandments are the moral foundation for which should be law, it doesn't mean that everything outlined in the 10 Commandments needs to be illegal. There are things that could be there that are immoral that wouldn't justify
Well,
us
then
saying
you're
as a
just
state they'd be illegal.
arbitrarily throwing out the first four
Not.
commandments.
I'm
No,
not
first.
arbitrarily throwing them out. I'm saying not everything that is a sin needs to be made illegal. But the things that we are going to say are legal and to codify into our legal system should be grounded on the morality that we see from the 10 Commandments.
Okay,
Now,
so
where's
so
your legal system come from with secular
no,
humanism?
hold on. I'm not done questioning you. So
I don't
the
care if you
10th
are. I
commandment
asked you a question. I
lists
asked you a question
women as
specifically.
property.
The 10th Commandment does not issue women as property. It
Yes,
says
it
you
does.
shall not, number 9 says you shall not cover your neighbor's wife, and number 10 says you shall not cover your neighbor's goods. If you're assuming that goods means
Oh,
wife,
no,
then
no,
why
no.
does
So you're
9
working
say
off of the
wife?
Catholic version of it. I'm working off of the real version of it.
What version are you looking at?
NRSVUE.
Okay. So what's the 9th Amendment or the 9th Commandment?
You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor.
What's the 8th?
You shall not steal.
Okay. I guess go through all 10 then. I'm looking at a different.
Yeah,
I'm
you
looking
are
at the
because
Catholic churches.
later people have come back and separated out that so that women aren't listed as property, but they are listed as property. So the 10th commandment in its original form that the Hebrews wrote was, "You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female slave, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor." Grammatically, this is lumping in women as property, which actually matches what
I disagree. The 10 Commandments. So the 10 Commandments that I'm looking at separates wife. Secondly, even if we take it in that, it doesn't assume that I'm saying that the neighbor would be the property of the husband. I do think that there are Christian beliefs of what a marriage is and what a man and woman's role is within that. Nonetheless, where do you get your framework
right.
for our laws and secular humanism?
Yeah, it's based in reason and justification for the rights that we have.
When does life
That
begin?
would be it. Life begin? That would be different than when you consider somebody a person.
Okay. When would life begin though? Can you answer that question?
I mean, I really can't tell you when something would
Okay,
be
so you don't
considered
know.
alive.
When does someone become a person?
I would say somebody becomes a person when they can live like on their own outside without being dependent physically on the mother.
Do you believe that people have the right to life under your moral framework?
Sure.
So then you would be against murdering someone that's innocent.
Sure.
Okay. When should abortion be allowed up until?
Up until 40 weeks, like the entire time.
So 2 days before the due date, we should be allowed to have abortion.
Sure.
I don't think that that's rounded in rationality whatsoever. I think that's monstrous.
No, yes, it is.
I think
So
that's
my
against the 10th
position,
Amendment, and
my
that's
position is
the
based
10th
on the
Amendment.
data, and the data shows that later term abortions, like you're talking about, are only done in cases of medical necessity. They are not done like when if somebody is pregnant and they're looking to actually have the baby and they reach the 40-week mark, they are intending to have the baby. The only reason why you would want to have an abortion at that point is because of a medical problem. And this is what the data shows. Now, the reason why later term abortions end up happening now is because you have so much legislation that is closing abortion clinics, and women are not able to get to either to any kind of abortion or pregnancy services in time in order to have it in an appropriate time. If we made abortion illegal and there were more areas in which were served with abortion and other pregnancy and sex services, then you would not see later term abortions happen unless it was a medical necessity.
Okay, first off, that's not true. Second, it's irrelevant. So we
No,
can
it
get
is
into the
true.
data. If you,
It
it's
is
not true,
relevant.
and it's not relevant.
It
You
is
saying
true,
it is
and
not,
it is relevant.
It is not, and you filibustering talking over won't change the fact. The reason it's not relevant is such. It doesn't matter if it happens or not. You're saying that your system of secular humanism would establish law through a code of morality through rationality. So it doesn't matter if people use this or not. You're saying they should be allowed to. That's what you just said. The Guttmacher Institute says that when it comes to late-term abortions, that actually a huge percentage of them are done from elective reasons and not for the well-being of the baby or the mother. Not realizing
I have no idea what that is. Is that like a right-wing think tank that you like to blow sometimes?
The Guttmacher Institute is one of the most prolific pro-choice institutions in the world. Reproductive health, which I apologize.
What are they defining as later term?
20 weeks or later.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where it's happening at. So this is exactly what I was talking about a second ago. In areas that are underserved for pregnancy and abortion services, women are unable to get to a suitable place to have the abortion, and so they end up having these later term abortions that occur 20 weeks and after. What you're talking about is closer to the 40-week mark, which is only done in cases of medical emergency. And the thing is that you shoot yourself in the foot here by outlawing abortion services and causing women this delay in getting those kinds of services. And I mean, you can look that up all you want to, but the whole later you're conflating the later term like actual definition there.
It's not, right? So later term would say we see viability. We see that actually fetal viability is above 50% at around 23 to 24 weeks. The majority of these late term abortions they're talking about occur after that 24-week period. In addition to that, you said that this doesn't happen at all. I already argued why it'd be irrelevant. You say that it should be allowed, and it certainly does happen.
No. I said it doesn't happen at all at the 2-day mark. Like people electively at the 2-day mark to the delivery date.
I'll finish my point.
You see, you're mixing up the things that I'm saying, and you're purposely doing it because you're disingenuous and dishonest interlocutor.
I'm just going to talk over it. That's fine. Now, to be fair, moderator, he's been allowed to talk over me the whole time, so I'm going to start returning the favor in kind. That seems only fair.
Well, yeah, if that's going to happen, that's strawmanning me, that would be awesome because that's not what I said. I was specifically addressing the 2-day prior to delivery.
That's what I was
saying. Okay, Rob, go ahead and make your point, and then John can respond, and then I'll bring up a super chat. Actually, two, because one's on this topic, and then pull it into a new topic, and make sure that you tie this back into the topic at hand. The is Christian nationalism good for America?
Okay, so the point I'm making is that you have no proof whatsoever that that doesn't happen. In fact, I could bring up an article from The Atlantic of an abortion doctor who talks about how he's given these very late-term abortions, and almost none of them are done for reasons of health of the mother or health of the baby. He does them for elective reasons, including one time doing someone at a very late pregnancy because they didn't like the gender of the baby. The point is, it's irrelevant as to whether or not it happens. He just doesn't know the data. He's just asserting it. But the point is, he would make it legal. Now, what I'm trying to say is I'm providing a moral framework for the laws I want, and I've provided the only case for affirmative reasons why that's good: to increase birth rates, to increase social cohesion, to increase things that I think are sanctity of life, like abortion laws, to increase Christians are happier. They have more economic success. They're less likely to go to prison. It promotes family values, which is better in health, mental health, physical health, economic health, innovation for the country. I presented all of these. All of these go untouched. He's only made a couple claims against my form of Christian nationalism. One, he said it's anti-democratic.
Yeah, because
He
you're
then
jumping all
argued-
over the fucking place, Rob.
He then argues, right, that he accepts that the majority of Christian, or the majority of the country is Christian, and therefore it would be anti-democratic if we said that they couldn't embrace their religion.
That's not what
He
I
says
said.
that that's true because of the First
That's a
Amendment, and
straw
yet
man.
it's clear that the First Amendment doesn't say
It's
that they
another
wouldn't be
straw
allowed
man.
to use their Christianity to vote.
You're doing
And so
nothing
he's
but
given
straw
no
manning.
offensive reasons whatsoever other than saying secular humanism good, which we've already shown isn't rational by the fact that he wants abortions to be legalized 2 days
Nope, that's
before
totally rational.
the baby is born.
Nope, that's all total. Like everything that I have supported and I have said is totally rational. Everything that Rob just said was a total misrepresentation of the conversation that we've been having. When I said that, when I said most of the things about the later term abortions, it was in the context of like, 2 days prior to the delivery and all this other stuff. Like that's the context of that, not the grander definition of later term abortions, like he was saying. To which I then explained what that was actually about. And that's the fact that people like Rob limit the access to abortion services so that women have to travel farther, and that ends up with them having to get later and later abortions. So he's only shooting himself in the foot and causing those abortions to happen, as opposed to actually preventing the later term abortions from happening. So Rob is the problem in that particular section. Now, to address his whole quality of life and quality of society stuff, I haven't even been able to address it because Rob's been bringing up just randomly random things that have no bearing on any part of his argument, really. And how I would respond to that is the fact that just because you're forcing women to have children, just because you want to force women to have these large families, does not necessarily translate to a happy, healthy society. We actually do have plenty of markers for what makes a happy and healthy society. And I think that a happy, healthy society would be, or at least a happier and healthier society would be one in which families that want to have children do have children, and those that do not want to have children do not have children. That's how you have a happy, healthy society that has low crime rates as well as low poverty rates. And so I think that Rob and generally Christian nationalists, when they bring up the whole reproduction number or whatnot, typically they're totally neglecting the fact that immigration happens and just people come in and out of a country, people move from one place to another and all this other stuff. So like he's totally neglecting that aspect of society that would definitely compensate for any kind of lowered birth rates or anything like that. But I think that the lowered birth rates are not necessarily a bad thing, because I think that what that means is that the people that want to have children are having children, and that ends up promoting the family unit that Rob seems to be very focused on here. And also, I'm trying to go through the list as they're coming up in my noggin here. Rob was mentioning the weakening of the family unit and all this other stuff. Rob thinks that it's only one man, one woman, and like 17 kids or something like that, and probably the dad with a few concubines on the side, that make a happy family. But in fact, there are multiple different versions of happy families: 2 men, 2 women, mixed races. I know that might make you a little mad there, Rob, but mixed race families can actually exist. The newer version of these like I forget what
and
kind
let's keep
of
attacking
families
the
they are.
arguments, not the people, please.
Filibustered enough there, Rob.
Good, and then I'll
All right.
feel free to actually make a bunch of points myself. So going in reverse order, the idea of calling me racist or anything is nonsensical, and again belies the rationality that he's claiming to have as a secular humanist. The idea that he says that we would force people to have babies, well, even he would have to agree that a secular humanist, all of them would probably agree, or if not, it would prove that the moral system is a failure, that we shouldn't allow for the killing of innocent people. But certainly a secular humanist could say that they dispute refute what other secular humans say when is viability or when we consider someone a person, he would have to agree to that. So it's not the idea that I'm forcing people to have babies. He has a subjective interpretation of when humanity is. It turns out that science disagrees with that. They say that life most likely begins at conceptions, and certainly those that disagree say that it happens shortly into a pregnancy. In fact, most would say by 14 weeks, almost all science would say that this is what we would consider a human life, right? The idea that he wants to have a subjective interpretation that means even up till the day of the due date that we should be allowed to exterminate this life shows that he is actually on the fringe and actually pushing something that should be against his own values, which is murder. This is why we should embrace a Christian framework that says that we shouldn't advocate murder. He says that this will lead to a bunch of later term abortions, but this is a nonsensical position. We shouldn't establish law by saying that if we see something that truly we all think is repugnant and immoral and that we should think is illegal, we don't make it illegal because more people will violate the law and do the very thing we made illegal. That's nonsensical. It would be the equivalent of saying if we raise taxes another 5%, this will lead to less people paying taxes because they'll revolt. That would be nonsensical to say that we wouldn't do that because we're afraid that more people would. There's no way of dealing with that. He also doesn't contend with the fact that we can see that Christian people, particularly Christian people that are in marriages, which I'm proposing Christian nationalists would not just pass laws to encourage through increased tax breaks, increased child tax credits, etc., increased tax breaks for marriage, not just pass those laws, but would actually help switch the culture to going back to a time we had in the past, such as in the 40s and 50s, where we saw children born out of wedlock were much, much, much lower. This means that these metrics show that not just for the children, not just for the husband, but also for the wife, happiness, economic viability, the need to, or the ability to stay out of prison, the ability to be employed, the ability to be able to afford things, the mental health, the physical health, all of these metrics show they're massively increased in the United States under Christian marriage. I'm able to solve all of these things through an advocacy of Christian nationalism. He has given no offensive reason whatsoever why you should reject Christian nationalism, other than to say it's authoritarian, which he himself is, because he admits that there is a democratic will if Christians decided they wanted to vote to have people that were Christians use that Christianity to factor in the laws, that it would be authoritarian to not allow them to do it. And he says the First Amendment means we couldn't, but he gives no reasoning for that whatsoever. So he has no offensive reasons whatsoever that we should not embrace Christian nationalism other than to just make insults at me about being racist and stuff, which is childish. Good argument.
Let's get into a few super chats and then we'll hand it back over to y'all. So Hank, in regards to infanticide, he said, Rob, may I remind you that the Bible explicitly allows infanticide? And then he quoted a few Bible verses. Would either of y'all like to comment about that?
Not specifically, I'm not sure on the specific verses. What I'm saying is the Christians that exist now and how they interpret Christianity that would be empowered through what I'm calling Christian nationalism would not support infanticide. The data shows that. Specific passage and verse. I'm talking about the 10 Commandments, and I'm talking about Christians that exist today in the United States and how they interpret these things. Nowhere in any polling or any sort of claims made anywhere is there a serious argument that the consensus would be that it would allow stoning of infants and things like that. It's nonsensical. So even if you say my belief is that Christians could interpret this as X, the truth is the Christians today that I'm suggesting be empowered would never interpret it as such.
That's just totally arbitrary. And there are contemporary Christians now, like Michael and whatever Pearl. They are contemporary Christians that wrote a book. You can go on Amazon, find their book. It was written relatively recently.
And they call for stoning children.
Well, they tell you how to create a rod so that you can beat children. So it's not stoning children, but it is about beating children to within an inch of their life, which is what spare the rod, spoil the child is. And what I said was that these practices by Christians are inspired by the Bible and end up causing untold amount of abuse on children that we see throughout Christian culture today. So his whole statement there is arbitrary and is without basis in fact or reality.
So again, if we look at the data, first off, even if there's a couple people that say that, that's not what spare the rod, spoil the child means, right? And even if there's a handful of people that say that, there is no evidence whatsoever that this is a majority belief among Christians in the United States. In addition to that, the data backs up that Christians, the more you attend church and the more that you have family units, are far less likely to engage in any kind of violence.
I totally disagree with that. There are
Show me
Christians
the
that commit
evidence.
violence every day. There are Christians that commit violence in churches.
Yes, you're saying, here's one Christian that did something. Therefore, when
No,
you
I'm
say
not saying one
Christians are
Christian.
less
I'm
likely,
pointing to this the
show me
Southern
the data.
Baptist Coalition.
Show me
I'm
the data
pointing
that
to
says Christians
the
are more
various
likely.
the various investigations into the Catholic Church. I'm citing like real world situations here that show that Christians interpret the spare the rod, spoil the child, especially for the majority of Christianity, to be about beating your children.
I mean, this is nonsensical. There's far more
Are you
children that are
fine beating
abused.
your child? Are you going to
No,
beat
I'm
your
not.
child?
I'm not fine beating my child. And again, you making personal proclamations towards me or insinuations to me
No.
are
I
ridiculous when
asked a
it's clear that
question.
I'm suggesting the opposite of it. Now,
I asked
again,
a
when we
question.
look at the actual evidence first,
You're
we can see that
offended by the question. That's
far more
fine.
children are harmed in public schools, oftentimes in secular environments. And in fact, through law and executive fiat or judicial fiat, they are now secular environments. Far more children are hurt in physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse in schools than they are in churches. Secondly,
No, that's
if we
not
look
true.
at the amount of Americans that are willing to use violence to achieve political goals, the data is stark that it's actually more secularist lefties. In fact, the more far left you get and
Nope,
more
it's actually
secular,
conservative righties.
that's not true. So, for example,
Nope, yep, the
according
Cato
to
Institute.
according to a YouGov poll that was done a couple months ago, it said most Americans across political spectrum say political violence is never justified, but younger and more liberal are more likely to disagree. So, amongst political ideology, 25% of very liberals say that political violence can sometimes be justified. 14% said they're not sure,
Yeah,
and another 5% said they preferred to say. Compared to very
yeah, and you
conservative,
know what?
let
And you
me
know what? I
finish
use the
real quick.
Cato
Let me finish
Institute's
the data.
numbers
Let
that
me
that
finish the
actually
data real
take
quick.
the
So I
number of
understand that you can
political
talk over. I don't
violent
have a problem. So
actions
I'm
that are
going to finish
taken
this data.
and
You can
who
talk over me and
actually
said you
does
had the whole
that.
time. Notice that before this
And the
point in the
ones that
debate,
actually
I
do it
allowed you
are
to
the
talk over me the
Let him
entire
conservative
time.
finish
You
real
said this
religious
is
fast,
people.
mega
G,
bloodbath
and
debate,
then
and the
jump in.
moderator was perfectly fine letting you to talk over me. So I'll return the favor. So I'll finish my data point here. This is what mega bloodbath debate's about, right? Now, the data continues. When it comes to the very conservative, those that would tend to be more religious, it's less than 2%
I mean,
or
I'm not
around
just going to let
2%
you
that would
lie.
be willing. I'm literally citing the poll right here from YouGov.
It's
It's
a poll. It's
2%.
not data, you
2%
dick.
said that yes, violence can be sometimes justified. Another 6% or so said they're not sure, and another 2% said they prefer not to say. This is orders of magnitude more likely if you're more liberal and hence more secular to say that political violence can be justified.
So what I'm working off of is stuff like the Cato Institute that actually took the number of violent offenses that have happened, the politically motivated violent offenses, and tallied them up as to whether or not they were conservative, Islamic, like as a fundamentalist Islamic, and then left wing. And the left wing came in at a pretty low percentage, whereas the conservative right wing political violence was right up there at the top.
Okay.
Tell them what
Okay,
mega
let's get
bloodbath
off of the
debate's
meta
about.
now and go back into the topic at
Right.
hand. So
the topic at hand
there's
is
a super chat from Evan Lord for Godless Engineer. Why should society and the government protect minorities that are neither productive nor support societal cohesion? Do the benefits outweigh the cons?
I mean, I totally reject the this as a loaded question. Because you're saying that they are neither productive nor support societal cohesion. I don't see that as a thing. And you loading up the question with that just shows that it's a circular argument that you're trying to get into there. I would say that minorities are important to protect because minorities are part of our society, and we should seek to protect the minority groups, and that minority groups are easily the ones to be persecuted the most, and that those minority groups, whether you like it or not, do contribute to our society in a positive way. And I just reject the loaded premise there.
again, the idea of rejecting Lotus premise isn't answering the question. Would you agree that there are
I did
possible?
answer the question.
Would you agree that there are possible minority groups that fit into this category that aren't productive or support social cohesion?
No, I don't.
There's
I don't
not.
agree
So
with that.
define a minority group. Is it racial only?
I wouldn't say that it's racial only.
Okay, what other characteristics can make someone a minority group?
I mean, it would just have to be a demographic that's like, I mean, unless you're trying to go in the direction of like a minority group or like a small demographic of people that, you know, are do illegal things. Like the definition of the minority is the illegal thing that they do. So like I feel like you're trying to lead me into the area of like pedophiles or something like that. And yeah, pedophiles are detrimental to the society, but that's because they are defined by the laws that they are breaking. I think that breaking the laws are detrimental to society.
Nonetheless, you just gave one minority group that would have fit the characteristic.
Well, yeah, but then you're breaching on equivocating there on what you mean by minorities.
Other minority groups
Typically,
that we could
the question
that wouldn't be based on the law that they're breaking, that we would see would still make them a minority group that could fit into that category. Once we're saying that it doesn't have to be racial and it could be some sort of other motivation.
Meant in.
That's not.
So if the questioner wants to send another
it,
super chat to clarify what they mean by minorities, that's perfectly fine.
That's a good point to leave that. If they will submit another super chat to clarify, then we've got actually two questions, one for each of y'all from different users. So the Jabroni Engineer, what's your moral foundation other than your preferences? And then there's another similar one for you after that, Rob.
Right. So my moral foundation would include secular humanism, and that is using reason and rationality to place the health and well-being of people in our society first, and to do the best to reduce the most amount of harm that we can. I think that's the way that our society can flourish. Yeah.
How is
2 days before delivery? I don't support that. But should abortion be allowed the entire pregnancy? Yes, because later term abortions are necessary when there are medical problems. I think that abortions being allowed the entire pregnancy and being widely available are going to reduce the amount of time it takes for a woman to get an abortion, and therefore there are no electoral abortions in that scenario.
That's the point of these sorts of things.
Please, both of y'all stop for one moment. So we have to be able to have a productive conversation here. As I said, y'all are both welcome to, if you don't like a question, there's a couple super chats that are very mean that I may summarize right instead of reading the actual super chats. You can opt out of a question here and there. Obviously, don't do it for the whole debate. Yes, sir.
I know of one super chat, and I just got to tell you, if you read it, I will not come back on your show. Okay. I'm not the disingenuous one here, but let's continue with the super chats.
Yeah, and so this looks like this was a question for Rob. If Christianity is such a powerful and wholesome force, why is its U.S. membership plummeting among women and young people?
So I believe that it's stabled off, actually. I believe there was a decline, but it's actually stabling off. And a lot of metrics show that actually, particularly after the death of Charlie Kirk, the numbers are going up. People are attending church more. But let's assume that data is correct and that trend would reverse downwards again or anything like that. Just because something is the correct and true way that would be better doesn't mean that everyone does it. For example, we all could probably agree that eating junk food is bad, and yet thousands upon thousands of people do that, despite the fact that we know that it's unhealthy. Same with alcohol consumption, marijuana consumption, things such as smoking cigarettes. So just because something is right doesn't mean that large swaths of people won't do it. And still, the majority of people in this country identify as Christian. So I don't think the question impugns whether or not the system is good. I think I stand alone in prescribing moral virtues and a good system that would lead to better outcomes when it comes to replacing birthrights, when it comes to Christians being happier, healthier, better mental health, better economic viability, and that would mean that the children do better off, which would be better for the country at whole. My opponent is yet to issue any criticism of any of that and has instead embraced secular humanism, which he claims is rational, but the only part we got of it was how he would allow murder of babies 2 days before their due date.
Again with the straw man.
Gotcha. And Geoverse, John already answered this one, but he basically said secular humanism and then explained that. Did you want to add anything to
that? No, I mean, yeah, I've already explained it, but I do want to say that in the U.S. from 2020 to 2025, the percentage of Americans identifying as Christians dropped from 72% to 66%, a loss of about 15 million adults. So
has that stabled off in the past? I'm not disagreeing with that, but has that sort of stabled off over the past year or two? I think it has. I could be wrong.
I think it's still declining, but
maybe. But it's still the majority of people. You would, correct?
I mean, yeah, sure. They're the majority.
Well, then the interpretation of the question would be, hey, well, the majority of people believe it, so it must be true, right? you would say, no, that's nonsensical. I don't think that one has anything to do with whether or not the system's good or the truth, right? How many people believe it
Well,
would be
no, I
irrelevant.
don't think the question had nothing to do about majority of people believing a thing. If I remember correctly, maybe Taco can bring it up. It was about, you know, why are so many, like, if Christianity is so good, why are so many people leaving Christianity?
Right. And my point is that the counter to that would be, well, it seems to imply there's something wrong with Christianity, which is why people are leaving. But the counter to that would be there must be something right with it if the majority of people are Christian. I'm saying that one has nothing to do with the other, and you would agree with that.
I mean, I really don't know, so I'd have to think on it.
Okay. Well, I think I made my point to the questioner.
All right, and then I think this one is for John. Could you please tell us the state religions of the 13, or I guess it could be for both, but could you please tell us the state religions of the 13 original states? Rhode Island was the only one that didn't have an official state religion.
Yeah, so I mean, each of the colonies had different. Well, the original states, each of the colonies had had their own religions, but when they became states, the 13 original states, none of them. I don't think any of them had like an official state religion. If they did, then that would have definitely been directly against the First Amendment, which meant that it wouldn't be enforceable.
No, just to be clear, no. Like, is your interpretation really that if there were state religions at the time of the signing of the Constitution, that meant at the outset the states were all violating the First Amendment? Does that seem more likely, or that the founding fathers thought that that was not a violation of the First Amendment?
No, they would have thought that it was a violation of the First Amendment, but all I said is that it wouldn't be enforceable. Like, they could have it in their constitution, but it wouldn't be enforceable. Just like there are laws on the books right now that says atheists can't hold elected office in several states, but those aren't enforceable.
That's not true. In fact, many of the states had official religions and said to be able to vote, you had to be a member of that religion. And that was
Would have
enforceable.
been a
and was
violation
enforceable.
of the First Amendment,
Then why
and
didn't the
that
founding
would have
fathers
been
speak up?
enforceable.
Why didn't the very founding fathers that voted for the Constitution speak up and say, you can't do that?
I mean, if they went through the proper process of bringing it up, you know, filing it through the Supreme Court, it would have been struck down.
I don't understand how you think your interpretation hundreds of years later as to what the First Amendment means, which is laughable, that you say that it actually means that I can't vote for a law against abortion and say the reason I'm doing that is because my Christian faith tells me to. You
That's
say
not what I
that's
said.
you said it over and over again. You said,
No.
correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's slow this down. I'm not allowed to vote for a law just because of my religion.
No,
if I'm a
that's not
congressman.
what I said.
Okay, can you? It sounds like that's what you said to me. So can you show me where I was wrong?
Yeah, what I said was, if the only reason why you're advancing a law or proposing a law is because my Bible says or my religion says this thing, then that is not a good reason to propose a law. Like, you could probably find some other kind of reason, and typically politicians would find different reasons, but you can't say my Bible says this, so that should be the law. Like, that would be a violation of the First Amendment.
Okay, how is that different than what I just said?
Because you're not just like, you can justify it personally by voting for it in that way, but if you're going to propose a law and say, well, the Bible says this, therefore this is the reason why, like, if you can't give a reasonable secular justification for it, then it's just going to get rejected.
Rejected by what? It's against the law. Rejected. The courts will overrule it.
Well, I mean, yeah, no. I mean, I think that other members potentially wouldn't vote for it, or if that is the law on the books, then it would get challenged, and if there's no good reason to uphold that law, then it can get overturned.
Okay, but I mean, my goodness, you're so. I mean, I don't know what's going. I don't know if you're doing this intentionally or not, but you're so all over the place. Just take a stable position. Even what you said there, I think I made it very clear. Hey, I'm proposing a law. I'm in Pennsylvania. I run for Congress.
Government is complicated.
I ran for Congress here in Pennsylvania.
Let's
say I would have won, right? I would have won. And I say at the state level of Pennsylvania, I'm proposing this law to ban all abortion in Pennsylvania. And the reason is because I'm a Christian and I think it's against the Bible. Is that legal or not? It's simple. It doesn't get much simpler. A yes or a no will suffice.
Right. I would consider it illegal and a violation of the First Amendment.
Okay, I disagree. And that's exactly what I said was your position. And you said, no, that's not my position. That's exactly what I said.
No. So like there's a difference in your personal reasons for voting for a law and the reasons why a law is being advanced. Those are two different reasons.
Well, the reason that it's being advanced is I think you're killing innocent people.
Okay, yeah, which is not like it has nothing to do with the Bible. God kills innocent people all the time. He mandates people kill other innocent people. So like that has nothing to do. That's actually antithetical. I would argue that's actually antithetical to the Bible. So
I think that they're killing innocent people because the Bible tells me that's a life.
Okay.
Am I allowed to push that law?
I mean, if that's in the law, then no.
If what's in the law? The law just says no abortion. The
Right.
reason I'm pushing it for
The law says no abortion, but if the data is contrary to how you're advancing it or whatnot, then it just simply becomes an arbitrary thing that you don't want to happen.
What do you mean the data exists? What does that have to do with what you're making a claim of whether or not
The
it would
data?
be
The data supports that abortion access results in.
What does that have to do with the legality of the law? You're just saying it would be a bad law. That's not the legality.
Because our laws should be supported by the data that shows that it's better to have abortion access throughout the full pregnancy as opposed to restricting abortion access.
That is whether or not something is a good law, i.e. the data backs up that this would be a good idea, is completely irrelevant to the discussion of whether or not it's allowed by the First Amendment.
Relevant. No, it's totally relevant because if a law results in a better society for everybody, then it's objectively better to have that law on the books. If the law is only benefiting a certain segment of people or anything like that, in this case, white upper class men, to force women to have children or whatnot, then I would say the data wouldn't back up that it is better.
Okay, so just to be clear, that if I push a law, even because I say it's grounded in my religious beliefs, that is better for everyone, the data says would be better for the country overall, then even if it was put forth because of my religious beliefs, that's okay. It's not a violation of the First Amendment. It's only a violation if the data says it would be bad for people.
Right. If the data is contrary to your religious beliefs, then you don't have the secular data to back up.
Okay, well, I think that I've won handedly that the data shows that embracing a Christian ethic would be better for the country on whole. So therefore, it doesn't matter your argument that it would be
definitely
illegal.
not.
You would have to prove.
A Christian theocracy would definitely be worse.
That my argumentation was wrong in order for it to be illegal. So your point of trust me, bro, it would be illegal because of the First Amendment, completely irrelevant, because you would have to prove that it's a bad system. That's the only way that it would be illegal. And I think that I'm winning that handedly. So I don't even know why you brought up the legality. And by the way, the other thing is everyone watching.
You could be delusional all you want to.
That has any sort of understanding of the Constitution, the First Amendment, or the law is laughing right now that you're trying to claim that it depends on whether or not the data would say something is good, whether or not it would be a violation of the First Amendment. I mean, that's just laughable. Anyone who's objectively honest,
that's not what I said. What I said was that you can use your religious beliefs to support voting for a law, but if the data doesn't back up the law that you're proposing, and the only reason why you're proposing the law is because my Bible says that is a violation.
The Bible says if that ends up being good for everyone. You said then it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't be a violation.
Right. And if that's the case, then you would have the data to back it up.
It doesn't matter if I need the Bible or not. I say this is the reason I'm doing it. And you're like, well, son of a gun, the data backs up. Even though I don't agree with the reason he's doing it would be good. You would say, therefore, it's legal.
Oh, God. Rob, you need to
I know nuance. I think you just have a very, very poor understanding of what's going on. I'm willing to go on to the next question. I think that
I'm not the one with the poor understanding.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of comments, so we'll move into some comments intertwined with the questions. But Professor Hizzle, in response to the abortion topic, said, I don't think Rob understands how medicine actually works in this country. No doctor would perform an elective late-term abortion, but it has to be legal and available for medical emergencies.
That's not true. That's not true at all. The majority of abortions that are late term are elective. And again, I'll see if I can find this. There's an article that was in the Atlantic, and it's called "The Abortion Absolutionist." Right? His name is Warner Hearn. And the Atlantic, which is very pro-choice, even says at one point in this article that he's coming up with hypotheticals that he thinks surely this hypothetical, the guy would be like, no. And what the doctor ends up saying in this article, who specializes in like end of term abortions, like 30 weeks and later, he says every pregnancy is a health issue and therefore every termination is for a health reason. That's his claim. So you're fundamentally wrong that doctors wouldn't do this. But even if that was the case, when we're talking about crafting law, we don't craft law and say that something monstrous would be legal, assuming that no one would ever do it. That would be like if I said to you, well, no.
Gotcha. And then there was one for John. He said, "What, Evan Lord? Thank you for the super chat." He says, "Why?" or asks, "Why is slavery bad when it can be very beneficial to country? Example, in Iraq, rivers needed to be dredged by slave labor for irrigation and trade," or maybe for both of y'all.
Well, I would say slavery is bad because it denies the bodily autonomy and the rights as the basic human rights as we've collectively been able to identify them as a human species. So I think that all of that just does more harm. Like it increases the amount of harm that's being done, and so that would be a violation of my secular humanism.
I don't think
Moral
it would,
foundation. Yeah, it's still whataboutism. What's this next super chat?
Yeah, simply put, said the word establishment in the First Amendment is not a noun. It means to found, create, or to set up something on a permanent basis, like a company or law. Would either of y'all like to comment on that?
Yeah, it's clear that. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, well, I was just gonna say, I mean, that's what I was trying to, I guess, communicate is that the establishment is not about like a church specifically. Like, obviously, you can't set up a law that says that there's an official religion or official church or anything, but the establishment part is about the law, creating a law that would establish that, or a law that would establish some kind of aspect of Christianity.
Right? For example, if it wanted to say that, it would say that what the First Amendment would say, if that's what you're telling is Congress shall make no law rooted in a religion. Instead, it says respecting an establishment of religion. In other words, expecting the creation of like a company, right? And so you could have laws that are rooted in Christianity. What you can't have are laws that say Christianity is the official religion. That you can't have. But you're absolutely allowed to have a law that you say the reason I'm putting forth this law is because of my ethics. Just like you have that right. If you were Muslim or Jewish or secular, you are allowed to use your foundational principles to put forth a law. That law can't establish your moral foundation or religion as the official state religion, but you're allowed to use and that's exactly how every legislator operates. It would be absurd to say that you can't use your Christianity to inform your voting preferences. It's nonsensical.
So I just want to clarify real quick before we move on to the next one, that Rob is obviously missing the nuance here of what he's talking about, because nobody is saying that you can't use your religion to inform your sense of morality or to inform your decisions on what laws you put forth or anything like that. But again, I'll say for the third time that the problem is when you go to create a law and the only reason why you're creating that law is because your Bible says
that there is nothing in the first.
I mean, that's exactly what that super chat was saying, Rob.
I'm a congressman, and last night I went to bed and had a vision, and my Christian God.
Real fast. That was time. So go ahead and finish your statement here, and then we'll speed run the rest of these.
Sure. My Christian God came to me and said, "Rob, the voting age should be 25." And so I passed that law. I'm allowed to do that. There is nothing about the establishment of a religion. You could say, but Rob, that's stupid. The only reason you're doing that's because you think that your religion told you that in a dream, and yet it's still legal for me to do that. What would be illegal would be if I said, he told me that we have to establish Christianity as the state religion. That I can't do based on the First Amendment. Are you telling me it would be illegal for me to...
No. So the thing, a more comparable situation here, and then we can move on to the next super chat. Would be, like you saying, "Oh well, God came to me and said that the voting age is 25." That's not accurate to an accurate comparison here, because what would actually be illegal would be like, "Oh well, my Bible says that women shouldn't be allowed to vote, so I am going to pass a law based on the Bible that says women shouldn't be
You're
allowed to vote."
absolutely allowed to do that.
Like that.
Yes, you are. Now,
No,
you wouldn't be
you're
allowed to
not.
do
That
that
would be a
because of the 19th
violation of the
Amendment,
First
but
Amendment.
that's because what you're suggesting is women not having the right to vote. But you're absolutely is saying, I'm pushing this law because
Right.
God told me, or my Bible. Yes, you're allowed to do that. Muslims could push for a law.
But if the only reason is because your Bible says so,
That
then
is
that
not
would be a
true. My
violation.
reason for pushing a law is irrelevant as to whether or not that law should be allowed to be pushed. That is completely irrelevant.
Is women not voting an essential part of
No.
the Christian doctrine? Okay, well, I mean, yeah, you have your own weird interpretation of
Do
the
the
faith,
majority of
but
Christians
my point
vote?
is, it playing into the whataboutism thing that you think isn't a thing. There are people that think that Christian doctrine establishes that women shouldn't be in positions of leadership, which would prevent them from being able to vote. I mean, JD Vance
It would-
Christian belief that
He
men
would be
are ahead of the
allowed. He would be
family.
allowed to push that.
And the only reason why you would do the only reason why you would instantiate family voting is because of a Christian belief, which would be establishing a law with respect to
No, it
a
doesn't say
religion.
establishing a law with respect to a religion. It says the First Amendment is clear. It says respecting an establishment of religion, not in respective to a religion. And again, you would be allowed to push a law for any reason you want. A Muslim could push a law that says it's illegal to eat pork. They could do that and say the reason is because of my religion. That's not against the First Amendment for them to do that. It's not. I mean, I don't know what to say. I could say I reject that because it's just for your religion, or I could say actually I support that and not because of your religion, but for this reason. But they're allowed to push for or vote a law for any
Taco?
reason that they want.
Yes.
Hey Taco, I've got to get up early.
In super chats right now, so we can. I can hammer through these very quickly, and y'all can say I don't want to respond to one, or you can do a quick.
How about 5-second maximum to respond? Is that fair?
That works. That works.
Yep, I could do that.
Some of them are not the nicest in the world, so just be prepared. There were a couple I had to filter out because of TOS reasons. So just a heads up. I think I did a pretty good job at that, at filtering out the really bad ones. Bridge the divide
all the way down.
I am going to say that I don't agree with all the comments and the statements of those commenters. The super chatters are of their own. I'm just reading them. Evan Lord, why is negative bias what you would call bigotry and prejudice due to not accepting the reasoning something to shame when it produces positive results?
That's for you.
I don't know what that means. Why is negative bias what you would call bigotry or prejudice due to not accepting the reasoning something to shame when it produces positive results? Well, I mean, I think bigotry and prejudice is always going to cause
not
more
necessarily
harm.
So theoretically, if there was a law that prejudiced against sort of LGBT and that saved us from a disease that was going to wipe out like 5 million people, I'm not saying that's the case, but if that hypothetically was to occur, we would say that the benefits outweighed that limited amount of prejudice. And given that you said whether or not something should be legal should be based on the data, it seems to be a question that's quite pointed towards you here.
Generate slides for something that I had written up. So,
and then he also said the Electoral College is part of our constitutional and democratic republic. Someone let engineer know losing the popular vote doesn't make an administration illegitimate. The popular vote doesn't elect the executive.
Right. I didn't say any of that.
You did imply it when you said that a minority, right, appointed the Supreme Court, and that somehow made it undemocratic when they overruled Roe v. Wade.
And
Well, no, I felt that stacking the Supreme Court is undemocratic because it unnecessarily leans the court in a particular direction, which means that there is no representation for one side or another. A more fair court would be balanced on both conservative and liberal sides, with sort of a more centrist in there in the middle in order to cast the deciding vote. I think that's a more fair Supreme Court. So, like, I mean, I feel like the super chatter was not.
It's
was
belied
not
by the fact
accurate
that you
in there.
specifically said in your opening statement did not win the popular vote. You just threw that in as an anecdote that didn't matter.
No, it did matter, but I didn't say that Trump was illegitimate or imply anything like that, or that the democratic process was usurped. What I meant was that stacking the court, the structure of the court, was undemocratic.
And I just want to say nobody ran away. They're both still here. We got the conclusions after these. Powder Dusty said runaway Rob is going to run again. Looks like you're still here. Would you like to comment on that?
I mean, it was my opponent that said if one chat was read, he would leave. I'm sure Dusty will comment on that, right?
And then
no, well, hold on. Let me be. What I said was, if the one chat is read, I will not.
I don't think I read it. I think I knocked it off. So.
No, you did. Well, at least it hasn't come up yet.
Oh, I think I knocked it off. Somebody said that you're gonna run. I don't know if I can post that one, but Powder Dusty made another comment towards you about you and Andrew. And then there was a super chat from Geoverse again. For the record, Rob hasn't insulted John once. Why is this biased? This is a very fair platform. I try not to push either side too much.
What does it? I don't think the moderator should step in if someone's. I don't mind that, but I was going out of my way to not make it personal. I don't care that you did, by the way. I don't care, but I just think it shows when you're coming through this as a secular humanist, and you're like, it's all about rationality and debate, and then right out of the gate, you're just like, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're this, you're that. It just makes your argument look weaker. It shows that you don't have the rationality that you're claiming to have. That's all.
No, I think correctly labeling those things is important.
I disagree. I don't think that I was a racist.
And then there was a mean super chat for John from Evan Lord. He said he will appeal to. He said you would appeal to bigotry of religion and the problematic insular religious cults, i.e., Scientology. I'm not sure if he went there. I do appreciate the super chat. Do you want to answer a couple of questions from Powder Dusty, Rob?
Sure, I don't care.
Powder Dusty, question for Rob. Are you going to crash out and run away from this debate and then blame it on the moderator?
Is my opponent that threatened to run away twice?
I don't think any of that happened on either side, though. And then Powder Dusty, question for Rob. I'm not going to read that.
Into you, Dusty.
Gotcha. And then AJC had a question for you. Hey, engineer, how would it feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning?
You can't base your laws solely on Christianity.
You can. There's nothing that says that you can't.
No.
And then Benjamin said Rob is doing more to discredit Christian nationalism by not defending it.
Disagree. I think that there are many ways that people can interpret Christian nationalism. I gave my interpretation of it. I won that interpretation is better.
Okay, and only two more, and then we'll get into the conclusions here. So hopefully y'all got some ammo from this for the conclusions. Nobody on fire. Rob, let's hypothetically look at if there were no radical Muslims. Would you support a Muslim theocracy? Provide the reason to prefer Christianity.
I gave the reason to prefer Christianity in that it has better outcomes in the litany of ways that I suggested. No, I don't want a Muslim theocracy because I disagree on how they say, the majority of Muslims say, that justifies the laws that would come with hence.
And then Bridge the Divide just commented saying that you did what he thinks Andrew does, avoiding the topic by focusing on emotional appeals and straw manning. And I'm not going to, there's some other stuff on there which I don't know if I should put on
I
the
don't
screen.
care what haters that are incapable of debating themselves want to say about me or Andrew Wilson.
I'm with you. And then chicken, pork, adobo. said, do you think laws are passed without engaging in hypothetical or whataboutism?
No, but I mean, when you're engaging in a debate where you're proposing those things, in this particular setting and context, I mean, it was whataboutism.
It's not whataboutism.
Gotcha. So we'll go into the conclusions here. I'm going to put up a vote on the YouTube for tonight's master debater. So make sure that you go on there and you vote for who you think tonight's master debater is. Rob, you let me know when you're ready, and I'll start your 8-minute timer here for the conclusion.
Yep, I'm ready if you guys.
You've got 8 minutes.
All right, thank you so much. So I think if you go back to my opening statement that I was able to prove my case quite succinctly. If you're looking at what was said in this debate, you can see that my opponent offered very little defense of the status quo, nor did he offer defense of sort of secular humanism that had any really offensive prescriptions as to why it should be preferred. I was able to articulate, even though we didn't talk much about it because it was just unquestioned by my opponent, or he didn't get around to question to it, the claims that I made in my opening statement that still stand, that it would be better for birth rates, it's better for people's mental health, it's better for their physical health, Christian nationalism, it would be better for the family units, it would be better for children in all ways, it would be better to increase our economy, it would lead to less prison time, it would lead to less violence, etc. That pretty much goes undisputed. The only couple of things he said was the question of violence. He cited a bunch of studies that I'm impugning exactly what those studies do. He has an appeal to authority. I've done this debate in several other times, including a modern day debate recently. No, these studies are a joke, particularly when we look at the last 8 years since Trump's been in office. We can see that the violence is overwhelmingly more from the left. And the polls that I suggested from YouGov, these aren't ridiculous polls, suggest that the left is far more and hence the more secular. In fact, the more lefty you get and hence more secular on average, the more likely you are to say that political violence is justified. We can see this in our current environment as people fight against ICE, etc. All of these are reasons to prefer Christian nationalism. There's no real downside whatsoever other than him just saying, but you'll be racist. I won't be. All the data suggests that the Christians that I'm suggesting would be put into power wouldn't advocate for racist policies whatsoever. They wouldn't advocate for stoning children. They wouldn't advocate for stoning gay people or anything. He also fundamentally doesn't deal with the fact that he has conceded in effect, and he'll try to answer in his last statement so that I won't have a chance to respond, that if we don't have Christian nationalism, what will happen is we'll lead to an increase in migration from populations that are antithetical in a bigger way towards sort of his secularist pursuits, such as people that identify as Muslim or other religions. He also doesn't answer the fact that secular humanists aren't reproducing, so inevitably the people that are going to fill the gap are some sort of religious group. I'm recommending that Christians would be much better for everyone, myself and him, and all of the pursuits that he's saying. You can see that his interpretation of secular humanism is not based in rationality. You can see how he goes to insults, calls me racist. You can see in how he refuses to answer questions and falsely interprets things as whataboutism it isn't. You can see in how he misinterprets clearly what the First Amendment is. And he's all over the place. Like, it doesn't just show that it's bad form in this debate, but I'm not really complaining about that. What I'm suggesting is this is the problem when you have a subjective morality set such as secular humanists. Almost every secular humanist I see that wants to debate online makes this claim that they're about rational debate. And yet, by simply sitting down with them for 2 hours, you can see how that rationality is quickly thrown out the window. For example, he refuses to answer pointed questions that get to the fundamental roots of his morality by just waving them off as that's whataboutism, even though that's clearly not what the term whataboutism. View that against me, who every time he asked me a pointed question about what my moral interpretations would be, I answered them quite frequently and quite out to base. You can see how he relied on things like interruptions constantly and justifying it by saying that that's because I'm a liar. And it just goes to show that there isn't a rational view. I particularly impugn his worldview, showing it how it would justify things like murder, which is another reason to prefer using a Christian nationalist foundation, particularly the 10 Commandments and the thou shalt not kill rule, where he's trying to make the claim that a baby 2 days before birth would be allowed under his system to be killed. He could say, yeah, but I'm doing that because I think it'll lead to less babies being killed, or I'm doing that because I don't think anyone would ever do it. It's nonsensical. There are doctors that are willing to do this, and even if there weren't, he's still justifying it, despite the fact that he waffled on it several times, saying that his moral framework would allow this to be law. It is a bad moral framework that the secular humanists are offering, and you can see why things are getting precipitously worse in many ways as we become more secular as a country. When we were less secular, we were happy. When we have family units, particularly based in Christianity, we are happier. And what will happen is if we promote these sort of values that a Christian nationalist would, in the framework I'm suggesting, mostly what would change would be we would favor going back to understanding that the core unit in our country should be the family, and particularly families that are embracing a Christian ethic. And we can see that the numbers are overwhelming, that this is better for all populations, regardless of your skin color, regardless of your age. These are the preferred systems that we should have for mental health, physical health, economic health, emotional health, etc. He doesn't answer any of this. He just says, well, it doesn't work for anyone. We're not fiating that people have to become Christian. We're not making Christianity a national religion. None of that's what this is about. And you can see counterly what secular humanism would offer. It's just nonsensical. It's complete arbitrariness. And they're not going to be able to decide things through dispassionate debate. They're going to yell and call each other racist and say, I refuse to answer these questions because it's whataboutism, et cetera, et cetera. So there is no stable moral framework that he could point to, nor that you could point to in a secular situation. In addition to that, we could see that when we see these people that are coming in that will be necessary to fill the horrible harms of not being able to replace our birth rates, we can see that not only will there be economic devastation, and we're going to see this in the next 20 to 30 years, not just in the United States, but across the world, we can see that either A, we're not going to be able to solve these terrible problems that come that's going to affect our economy, that's going to affect the health of elderly people, etc. But secondly, the only way we'll be able to replace it is by bringing in people that lack social cohesion. One of the arguments that wasn't dealt with the entire time is if we don't have a country where we're all cohesive based on race or geographic location, because the United States is huge, it's like as big as like large portions of Europe. If we don't have that, and we don't even say that we value what the founding fathers say, as he seemed to say at some point, what is it that brings us together as a country? We have to have a stable moral framework. We have to. And the best way to have a stable moral framework is to have an objective framework that we can put to. Instead, for him, we just have like, no, it's the greatest good for the greatest people in my interpretation of what it would be. And if you question my moral principles, I'll just shout at you, call you a racist, and say, actually, that's whataboutism, so I refuse to answer it. So for all those reasons, I think it's clear to say in this specific debate that he has exhibited both through his performance and argumentation why secular humanism is bad. He hasn't articulated what the negatives of Christian nationalism would be other than boogeymen, which he's unable to provide any instance whatsoever of how this would come to fruition. Oh, but this one person said, spare the rod, spoil the child. So some people might beat their children if there was Christian nationalism. And yet the data shows overwhelmingly those aren't the sort of laws that would be put in place. He'll try to make arguments in his closing statement that he hasn't made anywhere throughout the debate. He'll try to say, well, the reason we couldn't get to those questions was because you were talking about irrelevant stuff. None of that's true. He was the one who decided to constantly waffle, to constantly say, no, I didn't say that. And then after 5 minutes of discussion, say, yes, that's okay. That's what I'm saying. And to constantly change his position. So it's his fault. I am the only person that has given offensive reasons the entire way through the debate of problems that exist in society, such as declining birth rates, happiness metrics going down, people being killed in the form of abortion and things like that. We didn't get into it much, but like pornography addiction and all of this stuff, and how that's leading to people being less happy. And when we embrace Christianity, how that makes people more happy. He also hasn't contended with the fact that he has conceded that if we did have Christian nationalism in the framework of what I'm saying, which he didn't dispute would be a viable form of Christian nationalism, he didn't say that's not fair, it's not what it really is. He just said the way that it would be interpreted is in a negative pro-slavery way. There's no evidence to suggest that would be the case, nor am I advocating that, right? He hasn't addressed the fact that this would be able to solve these problems culturally and make people more willing to get married and make people more willing to have children and make people more willing to have these incredibly beneficial relationships that we see by any objective metric in the United States. Being a happy married Christian family with children, it's better. Is that time?
Yeah, you can finish your statement.
I'll just finish the So I enjoyed the debate thoroughly. I know that it got chippy at times. Don't mind the fact that he called me names and stuff like that. It's totally, I just think that it impugns his character when it comes to the rationality of it. Would be happy to come back, and thoroughly enjoyed the debate. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. And don't forget, people, there is the vote up for tonight's master debater. So if you haven't voted yet, make sure to get your votes in. I had you. Sorry, you had background noise there, so I had muted you while he was talking because he had a TV playing in the background, John. You've got 8 minutes for your closing statement here. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll start your timer.
Yeah, so what I did in my opening statement was I established how Christian nationalism would be bad for America. And with that comes the response from Rob, which is just arbitrary statements as to how he scores a society's health and wellness. And he scores a society's health and wellness by how many babies are being had or how many people are married and everything like that. So, like, all of the different criteria he uses to measure the health and wellness of a society, the happiness of a society, are not actually the indicators that we use for health and wellness of a society. If you actually look at the health and wellness of societies and how we measure those, you'll see that the more secular a society is, the higher it comes out on top of those particular measures. So the fact that Rob has to make up, well, maybe not Rob makes it up, but somebody has made up these mysterious criteria for what makes a happy and healthy society, a good society. Seems like it's not really based in any kind of like justified or rational reason. It seems to just be justified by, what makes Christianity look good. And I don't think that if you use a biased set of indicators of Christian indicators or whatnot that props Christianity up, you're really getting an honest look at the health and well-being of a society, because you can have a society that's pumping out kids every single hour, but that doesn't mean that the society is happy, healthy, and it ranks high on the wellness factor, that it ranks low in crime and poverty and all that kind of stuff. That's not what that means. Everything that Rob mentioned tonight, he has either strawmanned my response to, or he has just totally misrepresented what I've said. I've included nuance in my responses, and when he has tried to back me into a corner to give a yes or no answer, I've refused, and I've given what my position is. I tried to clarify that one time, and obviously, as I knew that he would, he strawmanned me. He misrepresented my positions at every single turn. Even in his conclusion that you just heard, he misrepresented my positions. Because like on the abortion thing that we spent way too much time on, he really focused on his whataboutism for, killing a fetus that is 2 days from delivery, when I perfectly laid out why that is not a likely situation to occur under my particular model. And under my model, it's the reduction of harm that is key there. And I believe that allowing women to have bodily autonomy and allowing them to choose, whether or not they should be pregnant, I think is a key factor in providing, to the health and well-being of a society. So basically what we're left with is Rob strawmanning and misrepresenting me all throughout it, me desperately trying to keep him on track as he jumps across and equivocates different ideas, different statements, and trying to keep up with the conversation that he seems to be having in his own mind, while at the same time, I'm sitting there also providing you with a firm foundation in which to build a happy and healthy society that has been shown to work in other countries like Norway, Sweden, other secular societies out there. Putting human welfare, reason, and ethics at the center of it, at the center of our moral foundation, I think is going to give us the best society. It's also going to combat a lot of the negatives that Christian nationalism would introduce, like the persecution of minority groups, the rampant authoritarianism that comes with white Christian nationalism, and other things of that nature. Secular humanism would reduce the harm in a society and promote a good and healthy society through reason and justified conclusions for that are based in actual data that represents what's best for a society, so that we can be a more data driven society that actually produces the results that we want, instead of a Christian nationalist society that I feel like Rob has a very dramatized view of how that's going to play out. He's got a very specific version of Christianity that he's proposing here, but there's no way which he can indicate that that would be the version of Christianity that is selected. And if history has shown us any other way, it's the authoritarian route. It's the route of fundamentalism, because that one seems to always win out for some reason. And I don't think that Rob has actually properly given us anything but arbitrary reasons to pick Christian nationalism. And I'm done.
Perfect. Thank you for the great closing statements, both of y'all.